Welcome to EVONA Origin Stories, the space podcast where we look to bring you extraordinary leaders from within the sector and their fascinating stories of early life, career, and how they broke into the space industry.
This is episode 5. This guest today shares a truly inspiring and moving story from finding her North Star as a little girl growing up in West Texas, looking up at the night sky.
From handwriting letters as a child to every NASA agency in the US, to finding her passion to serve in joining the US Air Force and being recognised as one of America's top 100 female founders.
Blazing a trail since 2017, where she founded Slingshot Aerospace, a company building world-class space simulation and analytic solutions for the betterment and sustainability of our planet.
Given her accomplishments and accolades to date, she truly is an incredibly humble and passionate human being that constantly pushes the boundaries of not just her company, but her own personal development, and absolutely insists on a cohesive and irreplaceable working culture.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mel Stricklan.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing, Mel?
I'm doing good. How are y'all?
Good, thank you. Very good. Thanks for taking the time to speak to us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for the offer.
Good. So well, look, thanks for I know you're a bit busy, so thanks for taking the time out your busy day to speak with us. Really appreciate you coming on the show today. So we'd like to sort of dive right into this, if that's all right.
Let's do it.
Excellent. Okay. So if we could start off back from the early days of Mel Stricklan, talk us through where you sort of started in life, where you grew up, school, college, and sort of how you found your way in your early career at the US Air Force.
Yeah, I'd love to. So it starts early on. How I ended up in the space industry starts as a little girl growing up in rural West Texas. I was inspired by the night sky, and out there in El Dorado, Texas, there's not many darker places on this earth as far as the night skies go. So those pristine skies where I could see the Milky Way on most nights really did inspire me to get my own telescope, to ask my parents to go on, family vacations out to Big Bend National Park and Fort Davis and those areas and visit McDonald's Observatory. When I was in the 5th grade, I got to see Halley's Comet through that observatory, and I got into even logging satellites in my little notebook that I kept in a Trapper Keeper. That dates me a little bit, but as they flew across the wide open West Texas night skies. And, once I actually learned that there was a space program, right, as crazy as this might sound, there was a tiny little library in El Dorado, and I went out there with the intent of finding the addresses for all the different NASA centers across the United States. And the librarian there helped me with that. I wrote a letter to every NASA center expressing my interest in learning more about the space program and their astronauts. And to my parents' surprise and my surprise, we started receiving these packages just a few weeks later. These manila envelopes were coming in from Goddard and Cape Canaveral and Johnson. Cape Canaveral is now Kennedy Space Center, but those packages contained like full color portraits and brochures and schematics and different things to inspire me, and I couldn't believe it. I hung those things on my walls. They were treasures for me. They were, I could see it, right? And I truly believe you got to see it to be it. And there were even female astronaut candidates that I had pictures of, and it was just so fun. And that same year that I told you I got to see Halley's Comet through that telescope out at McDonald's Observatory, was also the same year that my school project was the first teacher in space, becoming an astronaut, and that was 1986. It was my 5th grade classroom, and I still remember very clearly when the news was confirmed that shuttle had exploded. The Challenger crew had been killed, and I was crushed. I had been following this mission from the very beginning, and that was just an unspeakable loss. And I think honestly, it was probably my first experience with loss. I felt like I understood the meaning of service for the first time. These astronauts were, crew members that gave their lives for the betterment of us, of our nation, of the advancement of space programs, and really ultimately gave the biggest sacrifice. in the hopes of bringing global knowledge, unity, and progress. And that's the way I see space, and as a portal of progress. And so, I set my eyes on how could I serve in the future. And so I couldn't think of a better place to experience my dreams and hopefully cultivate them, other than the United States Air Force. And so I joined the United States Air Force to serve. And because I knew there was no better organization to be part of, to follow those passions for space and for flight. And I have zero regrets there. The Air Force was nothing short of extraordinary for me. I had an amazing 21-year journey there. I got to see and do things that most people don't get to do. I got to fly in the early days. I was enlisted, going to school nights and weekends, but I was flying in a surveillance aircraft in the back end. And then I commissioned to the officer ranks. And from that point forward, after 8 years of flying, I got to command experimental space missions and be part of the space control mission area for the United States Space Command, under the Air Force at that time. I got to help pave the way for Space Force. That took time and years. That wasn't something that just came out of an administration. It was several administrations building this, and I got to be part of that, cultivating that mission, and the need for a dedicated service. And so that's how I got into space, and I'm sure you're going to ask me more questions that allow me to tell you why we started Slingshot to really get after the vision and mission that we're after today. I hope that sums it up for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for taking the time to talk through that and sort of how you got into the space sector. So leading on to that, what came next then, Mel, for you after the Air Force?
Yeah, after the Air Force, I started Slingshot Aerospace with two co-founders in 2017. And honestly, we cast a little too wide of a net when we started Slingshot. We were doing geospatial intelligence, and in parallel to that, we're doing what we're laserly focused on today, which is accelerating space sustainability. And what that means is really gaining a better understanding for our customers as they monitor and optimize their spaceflight systems in this very dynamic, changing space domain. And so, yeah, that is what came next to answer your question. Slingshot Aerospace is well on our way to that North Star of space sustainability that truly makes a difference.
Amazing. Great. Thanks for that. And we'll come back to Slingshot, and I guess not to sort of jump around too much, but I was going to say I noticed that a bit of sort of synergy and something common that yourself and EVONA had in common was we seem to be both passionate STEM ambassadors and have some synergy there around our messages, both to not just the younger generation, but people outside of the space sector as well, that maybe look at it maybe through a lens and think that it's all astronauts. I'd like to know sort of where that type of sort of passion comes from and why it's important to you that you sort of take part in the work that you do at the moment for the University of Texas and sort of champion the various STEM initiatives that you take part in.
Yeah, so pun intended here, it really stems from the struggles I had growing up, being so passionate about space, but having very few opportunities in that little West Texas town to cultivate that potential. I think of STEM as more than just the acronym, right? I think we've even tried to add a couple of things to that acronym in recent years, but science, technology, engineering, and math. As we cultivate our young folks, it truly brings a new tool that I didn't have, or at least wasn't as strong as it could have been. That tool to truly deeply understand the changing dynamic world as it is today. And I believe that STEM initiatives gives our young folks the ability to develop critical thinking processes, which is a tool that they can take with them forever. And I think it's so necessary today for the future workforce, especially in space, but the future workforce across the globe, for folks to have the ability to solve complex problems today and in the future. And then those skills, that STEM helps to create are, the ability to dive deeper into facts and non-facts, to be inquisitive, to observe, to problem solve, to bring the scientific method into your problem solving and discern fact from opinion. And those, you know, that are fostered through STEM education today, we're really seeing the outcome of that, which is so very vital, with honestly all the non-facts that are flying through the channels that are available through our handheld devices today. These skills are just vital to the deployment and development of our future generations and of innovators and problem solvers and decision makers across the globe. So at Slingshot, and me personally, I believe that bringing spaceflight dynamics into that STEM experience will also help lead us into the next space revolution, where we're leveraging space even more than we do today, and where we're becoming a multiplanetary species.
Absolutely. No, sounds great. I just want to touch on sort of failures and achievements. So with various social media platforms, people always see the highlight reel of successes, achievements, and the products, but don't see the work, the grind, and sacrifices leading up to that. So what would you consider your biggest failure, and what did you learn from that?
Yeah, I think our biggest failure, my personal biggest failure, in starting this company, stems from two things. One, making sure that we had our core values that are the foundation of culture set early on. We did not, and so we started to see, you know, little drops of toxicity, which I think of toxicity is behavioral based. I think culture is, I think Simon Sinek says is best, right? He says culture equals values plus behaviors. And so we learned early on that just putting a couple of values up on a slide was only part of the culture equation. But that we had to bring in folks that emote the behaviors that we're looking for. And so early on, we didn't have that, and we started to see the outcome of that through lack of extreme ownership, right? And those types of behaviors started to creep in. So what we did, we knew that you know, we couldn't just hire the best skill set, right? And solve that. We had to really put time and effort as a founding team, get out of town, get some fresh air, and really think through the culture that we wanted to create and what those values would be, so that we could then foster a healthy, effective, and innovative culture where people could thrive on trust and feel engaged with their fellow teammates, with the founding team, et cetera. And it began with you know, getting those core values that were most important down, but then incorporating that in our recruiting mechanisms, in our hiring, and then how we retain that very best talent for the company. And by very best talent, I don't mean just, you know, the best astrodynamicist in the world or the best marketing person in the world. What I mean by best talent is that they come with those values and behaviors and you know, curiosity and those types of things that make it more well-rounded. And so early on, we failed at you know, establishing those core values and that culture to what we wanted it to be. But boy, did we learn, and we got that established now, and we are on our way to making sure that you know, when you come in this startup, yes, you wear a lot of hats. And no one's going to bring you anything on a silver platter here at Slingshot, but you've got to practice extreme ownership and all those core values that we have today. I think of culture as gravity, right? But unlike gravity, we have to deliberately cultivate it every single day until we're even sick of hearing it out of my own mouth, right? And naturally, we've developed based off of that the potential to go as fast as we're going today and solve those problems along the way to our North Star. I think another failure sometimes for startups is not thinking about existential flexibility. And you know, it goes back to the culture and the core values, making sure you're hiring the right folks that think about existential flexibility, which means we're going to be willing to make a shift that we think is better from one path to another, that we think is you know, going to advance us towards our just cause faster, better, and those things are hard, right? So earlier I mentioned we cast a very wide net when we started Slingshot, and we were doing too much. So that was another failure, right? We were doing geospatial intelligence and we were doing space sustainability, and it was hard to make that existential move, in to become laserly focused on space sustainability and cut off the geospatial side. But we did it, right? We recognized the failure and we made a change to remain existential.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, especially in the beginning, like you mentioned, when you're in that kind of startup phase and that mode, you just want to hire the best people, I guess, sort of on paper, whether that's the best engineer or the best salesperson, or like you mentioned, the best marketer. But those people, even though they're probably the best, technically and be able to do the job, it doesn't always mean that they're going to fit the company culture and the values, and the culture definitely comes first.
Yes.
Sure. Excellent. Okay. And on the other side of that, just going on failures, what would you say so far is your sort of greatest achievement career to date? And what I'd also be keen to hear after that is, where do you see, or where do you want Slingshot Aerospace to be in the next 5 years?
Yeah. Um, my greatest achievement was serving my country, period. And I have zero regrets. And it was through those experiences that I learned, mission-driven teams are unstoppable. And that trust and purpose is key to building the communicative network and fabric that it takes to have a team like we have here at Slingshot today. But I think the greatest achievement, I would be remiss if I said anything other than my Air Force career. Wasn't just that dream job in the nexus of my two loves, space and aviation, but it was truly serving for a higher purpose and a higher cause. And like I said, zero regrets there. And where do we want Slingshot to be over the next 5 years? We want Slingshot to be the go-to, that common platform that exists for all satellite operators to coordinate, to deconflict their, as I call it, airspace, right? But it's space, and to be able to do that with the right information at the right time. And I do believe that but in 5 years from now, we will be the nervous system, the advanced autonomy arm for the space domain, to have predictive analysis and optimization of their space flight and improve safety. And in doing that, then Slingshot will have, arrived at that accelerating space sustainability mission and vision that we have, that's so critical for us to be able to continue using space the way we are today, and even better in the future. But if we don't get a hold of this and reduce the uncertainty that exists on orbit today, the space revolution that is happening right now, with the vast majority of investments going into more hardware, rockets, satellites, and ground architecture, then the digital environment that I just mentioned will continue to lag, and we really are at risk of losing the ability to use our Earth's orbits the way that we do today, and the way that we need to do in the future to advance humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some amazing sort of vision and goals, and as you said, so critical to keep using space as we are today. In terms of advice, Mel, what would you say is the kind of best and the worst advice you have been given over the years?
Yeah, so as far as the best advice, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, and do that early and often. And we practice that here. You have to know where your weaknesses are in order to do that. And we practice that through retros. We practice that through workshops, and we practice that in our personal daily lives to truly understand where our weaknesses and strengths are, and then surround ourselves with folks that can level us up at every opportunity. And that includes our hiring process, right? We want to level up. We don't need people that think like us, right? We don't need people that come from the same background as all of us. We need that diversity around the table, and we need people that are able to rise to the occasion and bring us to our full potential as individuals and as a team of teams. So that's the best advice. The worst advice that I've been given over the years is fake it till you make it. This is by far the worst startup advice anyone could ever have, and probably, you know, as an individual as well, when it comes to integrity. But as far as startup advice, this is a big one. If you pretend to know more than you do, or say that you have, exquisite skills that you don't, you'll only end up making a fool of yourself and those that have taken the risk alongside you to build something incredible along the way to your North Star. So, right along that same line is, over-promising and under-delivering to your clients, your stakeholders, your investors. And if you do that, they'll drop you like a bad check. Maybe your friends won't and your family won't, but those stakeholders that are critical to the success and the rapid growth of your company, they'll drop you. So when you're starting out, no one expects you to have all the answers. No one expects you to be the smartest person in the room. In fact, it's just far better to have integrity and ask questions and be open and curious to learning. And that's how we've made it so far. And it's not by faking it until we make it.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think I've definitely heard that one a few times, especially in the early days of EVONA and getting advice from family members and friends and all that kind of stuff. So no, I couldn't agree more. And I think a lot of the time when people are like that, it's either one or two things. It's either a little bit of ego, maybe. They want to, be seen like they know more than they do. And also I think there's probably a bit of imposter syndrome as well, and not sort of maybe wanting to surround themselves with more intelligent people. So I couldn't agree with that more. Really good parts of advice there. So thanks for that. I think earlier on in the episode, Mel, you mentioned around sort of all the information that's out there, some of it being maybe potentially misinformation. And it sounds like yourselves and EVONA are kind of on a similar type of mission to demystify the space sector and educate the younger generation, people outside of the sector, and sort of really help them get into the space sector and learn more. So over the years and throughout your career, what would you say are kind of the key resources that you've identified and utilized over the years that's really sort of helped push you on and develop your career, whether that be courses or programs or mentors? What sort of helped you the most?
Well, certainly mentors, and I can't speak more highly of having a mentor program for your individual self and for your company. I know some companies put up a slide that has advisor board on it and has some pretty flashy faces there, but we take that very, very seriously and only bring advisors that want to extend their daily lives as slingshooters, roll up the sleeves and get work done with us, and that are mentor quality, not just a thought leader in the community, but that can truly mentor us individually and as a team of teams. When we first started the company, we were accepted into the Techstars Los Angeles initial class, and that not the space cohort, but the main program. And we were alongside folks that other companies from the film industry and medical and things that were not aerospace. And it was a great learning opportunity. We truly accelerated through that program. But you know what stuck with me, and we still have mentors from that program, is that Techstars is a mentor-based program. So, over the course of 3 months, we met with hundreds of mentors from places that weren't aerospace. And I think those were the most impactful to our company. Learning from other sectors and learning from, a diverse set of mentors is critical. Sure, I've taken courses, and I think the leadership courses that I was fortunate enough to have throughout my career in the Air Force really it was an important and critical part of the tool bag that I bring to Slingshot. And we believe in professional development, and there's lots of courses depending on what you're trying to do within a company like ours. But I think mentors are really critical. And then reading, the best resources that I utilize right now is my reading list, right? And learning from other CEOs and learning from other folks that have helped high growth companies. And so, books like Working Backwards, books like Amp It Up, right, by Frank Slootman that just came out. These are critical to my daily operations and my CEO playbook here.
Yeah, amazing. I think, yeah, some really good points there, as you said, learning from other people and being able to look at books and podcasts and, yeah, utilize what's out there to be able to kind of use those resources.
Right.
And as you mentioned earlier, in terms of, our mission as well, it's to sort of raise that curtain on the space sector so everyone feels they can have a role in the industry. So what advice would you have for anyone kind of looking to enter the space sector?
Don't do it for the money. Do it because you have a passion. Because space is hard. It's really hard. The industry's hard, right? And you really need that passion as gasoline to get through it. Beyond that, I think there's several pieces of advice. Continuously accept feedback, including the most critical, but don't listen to the naysayers, right? I believe there's always room for growth, even if you don't come from this industry, that you can grow into the industry, but you've got to be able to accept that constructive feedback from the veterans in the industry and then disregard the destructive feedbacks that may be resident in some of the cultural voids that also came along with the early days of the space industry. Especially if you're just starting in this industry or just starting in your space career, feedback's critical to all areas of personal growth and company development, but you have to know which advice to embrace and which to accept with grace and set aside. Establish guidelines for every mission so that there's a clear and attainable goal for you and your team. Again, space industry is pretty tough. It's tough to break into. I don't know many successful space companies that don't have one foot in government, which makes it even more critical that you establish your North Star as a company and be respective of those boundaries so that you can stay focused and not, take in, a spec from the government and build one off every time, right? It's just, you've got to, have a very clear guideline for your mission and for your company to be able to maintain and stay on that trajectory and stay focused, because it will be so tempting to take, government dollars that aren't on your roadmap, aren't in the guidelines that you've set for your mission. So stay away from that and try to keep your team and focused on your North Star. I'm not saying stay away from the government. I think government is needed and is a critical facet to understanding the space industry holistically, but just be selective and then build healthy relationships, whether it's inside your team or, with business mentors or across the industry. It's important to build those strong relationships with the people that you surround yourself with. We talked about that earlier. And then everyone, of course, has a unique viewpoint and experience that you can capitalize on their perspective, right or wrong. You can capitalize on it and build that strong foundation of trust where they feel comfortable sharing their ideas with you, even if you disagree. And it's that builds into a genuine, authentic reputation. If you've got passion, if you are accepting feedback, and if you're building healthy relationships and you've got a true North Star that you're building towards, then you're positioning yourself to be an expert in the future if you're not already one. But in order to gain that credibility, it's important to position yourself along the lines of an expert. But don't fake it till you make it. Be authentic, be yourself, know what you know what you don't know, and surround yourself with the smartest people in the world to fill those gaps.
Love that. Thanks ever so much, man. I really, really appreciate it. We really appreciate you sharing your story today. I think what I love is that you clearly identified your North Star so early on in life, which is which is something that's overlooked. It's so unheard of. I mean, people so often these days just kind of fall into a job or fall into a career. So it's yeah, it's incredibly humbling to hear that you found your North Star so early on in life and pursued that, and your passion. I think also you're incredibly humble in your approach in terms of how you surround yourself with intelligent people, constantly asking for feedback. So I just want to kind of take this opportunity again to acknowledge you and say, you know, thanks ever so much for sharing your story. And yeah, thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and best of luck moving forward, and looking forward to working with you guys more.
Excellent. Brilliant.
Thanks very much, Mel.
Yeah, thank you. Talk soon.
Excellent. Thanks, Mel.
Speak
Take care.
soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.